If you've ever thought about building your home, I'm going to give you 4 things to contemplate before you jump in. When my wife and I purchased this 12 acres of land in beautiful rural Oklahoma, we immediately had a vision and a desire to build the home you see behind me. Initially, we didn't think we were going to do it ourselves, but we had this one plan that we purchased. We paid about $1,200 for it, gave the plans to a builder, got a quote back. It was like a 12 or 1,300 square foot home, and the bid came in at just over $270,000. It wasn't your basic run-of-the-mill small little house. It was going to have some character, but that character cost a lot of money. After chewing on that quote for some time and kicking around options like maybe putting in a prefabbed home or a mobile home on the property instead, we decided that we would jump in and build a home ourselves. Now, we did this in 2020, and at that point, everything was wildly difficult in terms of trying to figure out pricing. But we did it, and we've been living here ever since. It took us less than a year, and that was with me having a full-time job and completing much of the work ourselves. Enough of the backstory. I want to share 4 things that we learned about building our home ourselves. After we talk about the 4 things we learned, I will answer the burning question of would we do it again? The first real big shock about building your own home is that once you move in, the home never really feels new. Let me explain that. If you were to have a home designed and built by a builder, get your landscaping done and all of that, you sign the paper, you're done, it's move-in day, you come and you may have seen it here and there throughout the build process, maybe done a couple walkthroughs, but you aren't intimately acquainted with the process. That's significantly different than if you're building it yourself. You've been there every step of the way, and so by the time you move in, the house doesn't feel new anymore. In fact, it feels slightly used. This cat talks a lot. And I think you might know what I'm talking about if you think about it in terms of buying a vehicle. If you buy a new car, a new used car to you or anything like that, there's that very first rush that you get when you take ownership, you go on that first long drive, or you sleep in it for the very first time. It's a feeling like no other. We've purchased homes used before, bought and sold numerous homes, and it's pretty exhilarating when you sign on that dotted line and that home is yours and you get to take ownership of it and go sleep, especially if it's a turnkey house. Real quick funny story is on the very first night we slept in the home, I recognized an immediate issue with the air vents. See, there was 2 air registers in my bedroom, my master bedroom, and I looked up in my bed and noticed that there was only 1, but I had distinctly remembered that there were 2. Well, the drywallers had covered one up completely, and I didn't recognize it until our bed was in the house, and we were sleeping. We're trying to, at least. The second thing you must fully grasp is how much time it's going to take. Like I said earlier, my wife and I got this done in about a 7 or 8 month time frame. And when I say done, I say that term loosely, and I'll explain that later. We spent a tremendous amount of time. I was working full time, getting off earlier in the day, and we worked every day after work until 9 or 10 o'clock at night for those 7 months. The only time we didn't work is if we were sick or something. And let me tell you, that was a tremendous difficulty with having 2 kids at the time under 9, I would say. Yeah, my 2 boys were probably both under 9 years old. A big draw to building your own home might be because you have a sense of perfectionism about you. And if you're building your first home, you're going to have a lack of experience and you're going to make mistakes. That's all it's to it. So a lack of experience causes more time to be involved because you're either fixing things or you're researching things on how to do it. Simply put, the process of building a home, even if it's small, is time consuming. Let's come back to that perfectionism aspect. That's a big one. One of my favorite terms that I've recently heard and that I've really held on to because it means a lot to me was from Chris at In the Woodyard. He essentially stated that perfection is the enemy of progress. And I really had to think about that because I've always wanted to do everything right. I grew up watching the TV show Homes on Homes. I've seen all sorts of examples of what happens when the house is built incorrectly, you know, with water trouble and all of that. So when I'm investing this much time and money into the home that my wife and I want to live in, maybe for the rest of our lives, I'm thinking I want to make it perfect. That is a huge burden, and if you think that you're going to make it perfect, you just extended your time frame even further than you can ever imagine. Man, it's absolutely gorgeous out here. Just enjoying this. I'm also checking for storm damage because we've had some tremendously high winds, and so far everything's looking pretty amazing. I thought I might see some downed trees, but I am not. What a beautiful place to decide to build your home. We're truly blessed. All these trails were built by my wife and kids primarily, and it's super cool. Normally I have a whole troop of cats following me all throughout these woods, but today we just got this one. Hey, Essie. You may have guessed reasons 1 and 2 of what you should know before you build your home, but this third one, I bet you won't. So the third thing is that you will never unsee the numerous various mistakes that were made in the construction of your home. This is a big one. If you have an eye for detail, you'll probably see things over time, but as you're building, you become intimately aware as you're trying to fit doors, as you're measuring for standing walls or anything like that. You become intimately aware of how unflat your floor is, or how not square a room is, or maybe how the windows don't quite line up the way they ought to. A really common thing is for trades to blame other trades. Prior to building our home, my background was a little bit of electrical work and cabinetry. In cabinetry, you have a tendency to build everything perfectly square because you're working on a bench. And of course, you're not going to make a cabinet that's not square unless the drawings call for it. And when you go do that cabinet install, when the walls aren't perfect, you're saying, man, these framers, what a joke. They didn't know what they were doing. It's really easy to start blaming the other trades. But as soon as you start building and you have your hand in the whole process, you realize, okay, there's difficulties with the foundation, there's difficulties with the walls, there's this, there's that. Because once you're to a certain point, you've got to run with it. You cannot stop, undo, or redo everything that you come across that isn't quite right. That is absolutely gorgeous. My property line does run through here. It's kind of at an angle from the way we're standing, so I couldn't tell you exactly where my property line is, but for example, that maple tree is ours, that oak tree is ours, but I do not think that that particular oak tree right there is ours. I think the line cuts through there somehow. I want to say that that big oak right there may be on the property line, and that property line shoots up that way. This is really an unseen and unviewed property for the most part on my channel. I have made some videos about it. If you're new here, you get to see something a little different today. Before we get to the fourth and final thing that I think you really ought to know, we will again address whether or not I think we would ever do it again towards the end of the video, and I'll explain that. So the fourth thing that you want to be aware of is that there is a high likelihood that you will never actually finish your project. We got in here July of 2021. We still aren't entirely done. If one of the main reasons you want to build your own home is so you can simply save money, you can totally do so. But I would argue that you may not save as much money as you anticipated. You see, we built our home as affordably as we possibly could. as simply as we could. We didn't hire architects. There was no engineering involved. Here in rural Oklahoma, very, very easy to build your own home. My home is built to code in most places. I do not want my house to be a safety hazard for my family. I want my house to be long lasting. I want it to be something that someone feels comfortable purchasing in the future. I do have a video of the process of building the home. Unfortunately, we weren't doing YouTube at the time, so it is a narrated video with pictures, and I kind of show and talk about what we did. Make sure you check that video out. Just to give some bearing, my house is over there. My house is back in there, and it's crazy. The leaves haven't even leafed out, and it's still very difficult to see it. So again, in terms of saving money, you will likely do so. But if you're trying to save money and you're doing it over the long run, let's say you're trying to do it on a cash basis, what will likely happen is your expenditure will exceed what you expected. You're gonna run that bank account dry, trying to get it done, like what my wife and I did. And then suddenly it's like, okay, I have this huge investment. We told ourselves we weren't gonna move in until it was finished, but it just didn't work out that way. You don't want to spend all that time and money and effort to get held up by a few smaller things. What that means is you move in without it really being done. That is a tough thing, because now what you're left with is a house that, like ours, for example, doesn't have any baseboards, doesn't have any trim, for numerous reasons, okay? There's time, there's money, there's a place to do it, because I had this grand idea of putting trim in that was milled out of the trees off of our property. I've got the material milled, but it's all rough, and there's no way I can just slap it up right now. It just wouldn't work out very well. So that's another great idea I had. Yes, it would be very neat to utilize the trees that we fell in order to put trim on the inside of our house. The only problem is through that idealistic view, it definitely has slowed us down. I didn't want to put MDF trim in there. I didn't want to put some generic fast-growing loblolly pine from Southeast United States in there. I wanted it to be something special because we put in the work, felling the trees, milling them, and all of that, and I think it's going to be a great touch when we finally get done. Now, gentlemen, I want to speak to you. My wife, Michelle, has been a tremendous blessing, because even though she would really prefer having baseboards throughout the home and having everything be tidied up, she does fully understand why it's not. That doesn't make it easier for her. She wants things like closet doors in the kids' bedroom and the office dearly. We're about to finally get our master bathroom shower done here, and that's going to be fantastic. We are hopefully going to be wrapping up the deck. In fact, that deck was supposed to be much further this week, but you know what happened to me is I got sick and put on my back. Like I've lost almost 5 pounds now in just a few days because I couldn't eat or drink anything, and it was just killing me. That has now got pushed out, where I had a goal that I wanted to complete by the end of this week, and now it's looking like that's not going to happen. I'm pretty sure this is definitely a place you guys have never seen. You'll notice back here is lacking in pines. I don't have very many. There's a few up at the top of the hill there, but you'll notice that my property is divided between hardwoods and pines. So the burning question is would we do it again? The answer is maybe. You know, when we built this house, we had the anticipation of building it and basically making this our forever home. I'm fairly certain that my wife and I are on the same page when it comes to this. I think we want to keep this home and stay in it for as long as it takes to get my boys grown up and out on their own. Boy, this cat has sure followed me everywhere. And I think that there is a high likelihood that we may end up staying in here for the extreme long term, but you might see something more like an add-on. Our house is certainly large enough for my wife and my kids and I. There's no doubt. We've got 3 bedrooms. Now, with YouTube and the businesses we're running, it wouldn't hurt to have an actual dedicated office. Boy, she's making me hairy. Let's just pet you right there. Will you stay right there? Because I've got packages that are coming in, going out, and all of that. My wife is a homeschooling mother, so we do utilize one of those bedrooms as our office space. So that means that both of my boys are sharing a bedroom. There's nothing wrong with them sharing a bedroom, but they're growing like weeds and they're kind of wanting a little bit of independence. Of course, there's nothing wrong with 2 boys sharing a bedroom. It would be nice at times to be able to separate them out a little bit. Part of that is because, like I said, we built our home within our means, and we tried to make it as small and as useful as possible. Because of that, none of the rooms or spaces are extremely large. We've made our house feel large with certain things that we did in the design process, but it is not large. So 2 preteen boys in 1 bedroom is getting to be a little bit tighter. Once the boys are grown up, do we need a larger space? Not particularly. However, if we ever wanted to be able to have guests come over and stay with us, it would be far more comfortable to be able to do that. Would we build a house again? Maybe. Maybe something like if we purchased more property, if there was an opportunity to build on larger or better land, that could potentially take place. But we love where we purchased. I'm sitting on a bit of property here that I'm certain I've never filmed for you, and it's just beautiful. And with the addition to the tractor to the channel, more equipment as time goes on, I'm going to be able to get access over here, and it's going to be fantastic to be able to get over here someday when I have a side-by-side, or if I can cut roads in for my Toyota Tacoma to drive over here, it'll be absolutely fantastic. So to sum things up, if you're married, I really encourage you to sit down with your spouse and make sure you're both on the same page. 1, it's going to take a lot of work and the house never quite feels new. 2, it takes quite a bit of your time and you're going to make mistakes and it's stressful. 3, if your wife is a perfectionist like mine is, I'm a perfectionist bad enough, but my wife is extremely a perfectionist. She cannot unsee all the things that are not quite right in the house. Had she not been there during the build process, I'm convinced 3/4 of them she wouldn't even know about. And the 4th thing is if you're trying to do it on a budget and you're trying to do it like the old homestead way where they built it from scratch all themselves by hand hewing and forging their own nails, you're not going to be probably that deep into it, but you got to understand that the modern life is just not the same as it once was. There's other things and other pressures, and you're likely going to find that it's going to be very hard to get the project actually finished. And that is where my wife and I are right now. We're trying to get it finished. I think that our experience is extremely valuable because we actually took the deep dive into building our own home. And when I say that we did it ourselves, I mean that we drew up the plans, we got bids, we hired certain contractors. Like, for example, my concrete was too big of a job for us because it wasn't just a pad. There was 10-foot walls to be poured and all that. So overall, I'm very happy with what we did. At the same time, I also think that before you jump in and do it, I really hope that you'll take these things into heart. And if you've done it, make sure you share below what your experience is. If there's anything you can add. And I'm out of breath. Whew, this hill. Plus, remember, I've been sick. But again, if you've done it, make sure that you share below anything that I may have missed, or if I kind of overstated one thing or another in your opinion. This will be for the diehards that like to stay till the very end. I'm going to walk to, if I can find it, I'm going to walk to the rear property marker. I have a general idea of where it is. I think we ought to be able to find it. I would love to be able to get back here and harvest some wood. This white oak's in very bad shape. I keep waiting for this to fall down. Look at that bad boy. keep looking for storm damage, and I'm not seeing anything yet. And I'm hoping that I'm walking to my stake. Pretty sure. As you can see, we don't have very many neighbors. There it is. I knew I was going the right direction. Here we are. Rear T-post. So my property goes through like right there, and it's like a 90-degree angle up over the hill. I'll try to walk this. There's a ribbon on a tree up here. Someone tied on when they got it surveyed, or corner stake surveyed. I'll try to walk the way that this is laid out here. It's such a beautiful place. I remember before we purchased this, we walked it and just fell in love. Look at these. I think these are the dogwoods. Yeah, I think this is the dogwood, or it might be the redbuds. It's one of those trees. I love them, man. They just kind of grow straight up like that. They're so pretty. That was a fluorescent piece of tape, and it's probably so faded now that we're not gonna find it. Oh, it's actually right there on the ground, I think. Look at that. That's so funny. I just so happened to look down and see it. It's somewhere around here. That's the problem with tying tape in trees. So that, I knew I was kind of on track, and I think a lot of people, if you're like in the city, or if you're in a highly developed area, or maybe an affluent rural area, you might wonder, like, how do you not know exactly where your property lines are? I've been told that surveying will only get you close. It's not going to tell you exactly. You can get it surveyed numerous times, and those points are going to move a little bit. That's what I've been told. I don't know if that is everywhere, but on an area this vast and with the topography, I could be wrong, but I can tell you this, that every single map, satellite map, man, stuff looks so weird. Walking down towards my road. In a moment here, it's going to get very steep, and you might just see me fall on my can. Not much storm damage back here, and really not a lot of high dollar timber either. Mostly smaller. You know, like this is a nice looking little white oak right here. Probably 18 inches at the base. But I don't know how to read timber like loggers out there. I feel like that's a nice piece of wood, I think. But majority of the stuff isn't. I think that's like a red oak right there. And if that's solid, that could be something. But to be honest with you, that may not be on our property. Yeah, I don't think it is. I think my property line cuts between me and that. Come on, Essie. I'm surprised she's the only one that came with us today, really. Normally we get a whole bunch of them following. Yeah, we're walking towards our maple tree. Like I said, I really do think we're probably close to that line right now. The big old tree right there, stretching up to the sky. Big, big, big. But I guarantee you it ain't real healthy. That tree fell a couple years ago. You know, if I ever spoke to the property owner, I might be able to get it, but it's hard to say whether or not it's even sound enough to bother with. There's a big old tree. Let me stand in front of it here. We have string on here. My kids did that. I don't remember why. I think they were actually making like a hammock out of a lot of this string. They literally like put so much string up they could suspend themselves in it. But that's what's happened there. And I don't have my knife on me. so I can't cut it off easily. Oh, broke it. That's good. So we are back down there, and right there, I'll zoom in. You can see the windows on my house, kind of where we started the video at. There's a deck up there, and I'm zoomed in 5 times. Let me go to regular 1 times, and that's where we're at. To everyone that stayed through this part, I really do appreciate you. I think it's a lot of fun being here with you, and just really appreciate all you do. We are about to hit 20,000 subs. Probably within, if it keeps going the way it has been, probably within a month or so. And that's going to be an absolute incredible thing. And that's just amazing. I can't believe that's happening. There's some incredible stuff back there. I wish it were a little bit more accessible. Because when we found it, it was absolutely a huge, exciting thing. So guys, thank you for watching the Okie Woodsman channel, and I will see you on the next one. I think those were dogwoods because that's a redbud right there. Isn't that pretty? I love those trees. And those light green buds you see there, I'm pretty sure those are actual dogwoods. Oh, that was a little off earlier.